Wait. You gotta check out this video before you go to the airport. There is some important information you should know before you go, and I'll tell you more after this. Hey, I'm Marauding Megs, and it's great to see you. Okay, so your trip is coming up really soon, and hopefully you started packing already, or at least started gathering things, right? So with any trip that you plan to go on, you have to pack accordingly. So that doesn't mean you have to just focus on what the weather climate is like, but also what items you can or cannot bring on an airplane, what are the size and the weight limits for my suitcases, and what's the difference between carry-on and checked bag luggage? So here are some things you got to know before you go. So what are the restrictions for your particular airline? Each airline is different, but when it comes to prohibited or restricted items, we're talking about guns, ammunition, knives, scissors, fireworks. That's pretty standard across the board that those are not allowed on the airplane whatsoever. You've got to follow these rules. The airport security does not mess around, okay? And you don't want to ruin your trip before it even begins. So if you just follow the guidelines and make sure you know what items are restricted, you will be fine. You also have to look and see how many suitcases you're allowed to bring with you as a checked bag or even carry-on luggage. Some items, it depends on the quantity, you can bring 2 or 3 items for free, depending if you're going domestic or international. Sometimes you can only bring on 1 suitcase that you won't get charged for, and then an additional one would cost you more if you needed to bring an extra suitcase or whatnot. So double check with your airline what those guidelines are and find those hidden fees, because they do exist. You really just have to keep an eye out for it. Liquid restrictions. The standard allowance for liquids is 100 milliliters or 3.4 ounces. So these size bottles, especially if you're going through customs. So this was the bane of my existence when I was backpacking through Southeast Asia, because I was only traveling with carry-on luggage. And so the limit was 100 milliliters or 3.4 ounces. And so if I was going through customs because of those restrictions and I was traveling, let's say, a full bottle of sunscreen or a full bottle of shampoo, I would either have to leave them at customs with the officer there, or I could go back and put them in my checked bag luggage if I had any. But the problem is, since I was only traveling with carry-on, I would have to leave my sunscreen behind. So when you're going through customs and you're bringing carry-on luggage, make sure you have the 100 milliliter or the 3.4 ounces bottles. So how do you get your liquids, aerosols, gel, cream, and paste through customs in your carry-on luggage? Well, you will need a quart-sized Ziploc bag that has all your liquids, aerosols, gel, cream, and paste inside this bag. Now, when I was traveling, I took a large Ziploc bag and I didn't fill it to bursting, but I did do okay with it. But just to be safe, use a quart-sized bag. That's what they're recommending. You can use a Ziploc bag or a carrying case that's this size, and just put your selected items into this bag. The rule they have at the airports is that you have to only have one of these bags. So you have to fit everything that you want in this bag. So you have to choose your items carefully, because if you can't fit everything in here, you're gonna have to either leave it with customs, or you have to put it in your checked bag luggage. The problem with that is if you are traveling with just carry-on luggage and you don't have any checked luggage, then you're gonna have to leave it with the officer. So make sure you choose your items very carefully, and also make sure that each of these containers are 100 milliliters or 3.4 ounces for each of these containers. So each one of these meets the requirements. It can be below 100 milliliters or 3.4 ounces, but just make sure you're meeting the absolute requirements, okay? Ladies, if you're packing makeup, liquid restrictions also applies to this. So you have to go through your makeup bag and check to make sure that what items that are liquid are considered liquid, okay? So I have lip glosses here, and my eyeliner is definitely a liquid eyeliner, so I gotta take that out. Also, your mascara, you might not think it's considered liquid, but it is. Another tip to check to see if it's considered a liquid is if you find on any of the bottles that has fluid ounces, then that's considered a liquid, and you would have to put all those items also in your little quart-sized bag, and they have to fit as well. So once you've chosen your items that you want to put in your carry-on quart bag, make sure that it's separate from your carry-on luggage, or it's easy to grab, because they're going to ask you, the custom officers are going to ask you to take it out of your luggage and put it in a separate tray of its own for processing. If you have any questions about different types of liquids, see the link in the description below for more information. What is the difference between personal item, carry-on, and checked luggage? Okay, so there is a big difference between those three luggage options. Depending on which luggage option you choose will determine what restrictions apply to it. Personal item is usually a small bag, either a purse or the size of a reusable grocery bag. Now, the purpose of this is to be able to put this bag underneath the seat in front of you on the airplane, so it has to fit. Now, some airlines are more vigilant when it comes to how many personal items you're allowed to have, the size, and whatnot. So you have to read up on what a personal item is according to your airline of choice. Carry-on luggage is luggage that you bring with you on the plane so it doesn't leave your person. So it can be a small suitcase or it can be a backpack, for example. So because you're bringing it with you on the plane, you have to bring it with you through customs. And through customs, they have restrictions, like the liquid restrictions that I mentioned before. This is where a list of restrictions and prohibited items comes in handy that you can refer back to. As long as you're following that information, you will be fine. For example, I burn quite easily. So I bring sunscreen everywhere I go. I'm not kidding. I burn very, very badly. So there was one time I was traveling and I came through customs and I got stopped because I had exceeded the limit, which is, okay, so this bottle is 240 milliliters and I have exceeded the 100 milliliter restriction. So I had two options. I could leave it with the custom officer, or I could go back and put it into my checked luggage. The problem with that is I didn't have checked luggage, so I had to leave it with them. And guys, I cried. Like, I almost cried. I was so upset to leave this behind because it was a brand new bottle, and this brand is particularly expensive, and I get this one because it works. So it was just so heartbreaking that I had to walk away without my sunscreen. But it could have been avoided if I had just put it into a bottle that was regulation size, so 100 milliliters or 3.4 ounces, and just transferred it over and it would have been fine. I wouldn't have had an issue. But if you don't have access to an extra bottle like this to transfer it over, then you just gotta leave it at customs. And finally, checked luggage is usually bigger than a backpack, and it's usually a large suitcase that can't fit in the airplane, either in the overhead compartment or underneath someone's seat in front of you. So that needs to be checked in at the airline desk where you would get your airplane ticket or your boarding pass. So that's where it would go. From that point, when you check it in, the airline will take the baggage, usually, and make sure it gets onto the plane, usually. Now, when I say usually, I mean there is a chance the airline might misplace your baggage. It might not go onto the correct plane or get to where it needs to be. Now, this hasn't been my personal experience, but I know other travelers that it has happened to. But usually when you report that your luggage is not where it's supposed to be, like when you go to pick it up at your destination. You just report that it's missing, and the airline usually finds your luggage. It could take a couple days to a week, depending, but they will get it for you, and they will usually reimburse you for the hassle. Weight and size limitation on your luggage. So each airline has their own rules when it comes to weight and size of their luggage for carry-on or even checked-in luggage. It also depends if you're traveling internationally or locally, so pay close attention to this, because if you do not, you will be finding yourself paying additional fees, which can be very expensive. Your passport, ID, and your plane documents, okay? I think this is the most important thing to have, because if you don't have your passport or ID, you can kiss that trip goodbye because you ain't going. So make sure that your passport is up to date, because the custom officers may give you a problem if it's closer to the expiry date. So if your passport is like 6 months until it expires, I would just go and renew it to avoid the hassle. Now, if you're traveling domestically, you just need your driver's license. But again, government or airline policy may change that, and it's just best to have a passport on hand, especially if your friends want to take a spontaneous trip that leads you out of country. A passport is really the ultimate key to freedom and adventure. And there you have it. I hope this helped with your travel plans and made it a little bit easier. If I have missed something important in this video, or you have an amazing tip of your own, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and just remember to try something new. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!